Welcome back to Try Business International. My name is Bob Babbitt. We're brought to you by Endurance Sportswire and Babbittville.com. Our next guest, Mr. John Cobb. John, how the heck are you?
Pretty good. I got up early, did my hair special. So I'm
Hair looking good. Looking really good. So you've been in this world for a long, long time, going back to what, Greg LeMond era?
I started riding bikes in '72. Did my first triathlon in '81.
Okay.
And been in the business since then. So.
And talk a little bit about going from a participant in a sport to basically creating a business around it.
It's a suicide mission.
Yes, it is. But we've all been on it together.
Oh, that's
the Kamikaze Brothers.
Yeah. I don't know. I just enjoyed it, and over the years, you just meet so many people, and they're just nice people.
Yeah.
That you just want to, get involved in it. And if you're at a point in your life to where you can change jobs or start a job, and your family can put up with it, it's not for everybody, but it's something I did and I enjoyed, and it's kind of worked out.
When you start talking about, I think you were one of the first guys to make use of a wind tunnel for cyclists. Talk a little bit about that. What led to that, and what did you learn from it?
Well, I started going down to Texas A&M because at the time it was close to my house. Right. It still is. And it was one of the very few tunnels that you could get into. Otherwise, they're all military tunnels. Yes. And things, so you just can't get in there. And I don't have any kind of an aero background, but I was doing race car stuff, and I was racing Formula Fords, and I was trying to get my car to go faster, and a friend of mine said, well, you can put it in this wind tunnel. So I show up down there and did it, and got faster, and I was in the bike business then, and I said, would this work for humans? And they go, oh yeah, it should. We don't know. I had never had one in here, but I said, okay. So I went back, and it's expensive. You
have to figure out all the tooling, right, to be able to put a bike in there.
I had to figure all that out, and the bigger problem was it's real math driven, and I'm like a no math guy, and so I ended up having to get some funding for their aero department to figure a way to do the math down to a number I could understand. It was just a huge mess, but it worked out pretty good. And so until about 2000 or 2001, it was the only place you could go test humans in a wind tunnel.
Was in Texas.
In Texas. And then in around, I think, 2001 or 2, they finally opened up the San Diego tunnel so more people could go there.
Yes.
And so now, they're kind of everywhere, and they've diluted the value of it because people really don't understand. You go to a wind tunnel, you're going to spend some hours there to learn things. And
it's very tedious.
It's very tedious and very expensive. That $500 an hour clock runs really fast. And
what breakthroughs came out of the wind tunnel from cycling perspective?
Oh, just so many. The wheels, the forks, the frame shapes, the helmets, the clothing, handlebars, aero bars, how to use aero bars.
I was going to say, because there's obviously a cyclist uses an aero bar is different than a triathlete who's got to get off and run afterwards.
Right. And just so many things. Like I always, I go to a lot of races, like, not like you, but some, and I'll be sitting there and some young guy will come up and he goes, I really thought up something. You ought to try this sometime. And he'll tell me something. I said, well, we kind of tried that in '87, 88. And, back in the late 80s, Steve Head and I were going to the wind tunnel 3 or 4 times a year and just inventing all kinds of things, doing wheels and spoke shapes and hub shapes and so many products that are just now coming out.
Right.
And so, I try not to be blasé about it, but I go, really been there, done that.
You've done it all.
Well, nobody's done it all, but I've done a lot of it.
What's next in the world of cycling? I mean, how much faster can bikes get?
Well, the bikes could go a lot faster, but the rules keep them wrangled in a little bit, which is kind of a good news, bad news thing. But right now, the real technology is in training, and I'm on like this whole mission about coaches.
Okay.
Because a lot of people go do a couple of races, they do an Ironman, and all of a sudden they're a coach.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think there just needs to be this wholesale change in that system. I tell people, I said, I used to coach people, and they live at your house when you do that right. There's there's not very many real coaches.
You can't really coach somebody online.
Online, that's just like the worst. And so I tell people that all the time. A coach is, all about, swim technique, blah, blah, and riding and running and all that. But he can't do that if he's not with you. If he's not following you in the car.
Videotape. That doesn't do it.
And then it's mental. That's what, like Brett Sutton's so great, because he knows how to read the athletes so well and motivate them to do different things. And then you got to just observe their nutrition, or do they need more vitamins, or they, what is it? And so many of the new coaches just don't get it. And so that's why I'm hoping things like Ironman U or the USTA can build better coaching requirements so that these people aren't just taking your money, they're really giving you something back for it.
It's interesting. One of my pet peeves is that a lot of times coaching hasn't changed over the years, right? You've got, especially in the world of running specifically, you got a lot of the college coaches who still immediately just give these kids 100 miles a week and have never really thought about, well, what if they run a little less and ride a bike and swim, and maybe they can get some of that anaerobic workout doing other things. Mm-hmm. Do you find from the coaches you've worked with over the years that sometimes they're just not open to trying new things?
Just go to Europe if you want to learn about that. That's the worst. But most coaches are just they're not inventive, and you talk to them and they say, well, I don't want to invent anything. I just want to make these people better athletes. I go, well, there's some new technology coming. It's just like the running shoe beds now that are starting to give power output and that kind of stuff. There's some good technology. Just the 920 Garmin's, you can carry more on your wrist than all the information we ever had two years ago.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? When you look at
crazy.
When you can ride and know that this leg is pushing more watts than the other leg, and when you look at the different equipment that's out there now, what do you find is the best piece of equipment that really helps you when you're working with an athlete?
Well, it's two things. One, and the downfall to all this equipment is the interpretation of it.
Yeah.
Because that's really pretty complex. People download the graphs and they go, oh, cool, look at all these lines, but they really don't know what that means. So I think there still needs to be another step up in interpretation data. But generally, just as a blanket statement, the 920s Garmin's are just crazy,
Business-wise, you've been in this business of basically technology and endurance and wind tunnel, et cetera, for a long, long time. What's next for you?
Well, I'm 67, so I'm hoping to just keep riding, waking up on the right side of the grass. But I don't know. It's pretty interesting. I really think, like in my business or in so many of the smaller businesses, and smaller means something smaller than Trek or Specialized, is that we've got to really commit to the youth movement. Because I know so many of the owners of, like Speed Play Pedals and all these guys. So we've been around, a long time. Well, it's not that we are not capable of thinking, it's that we're conservative. And you really can't be that way. If you're appealing to 30-year-olds for your market, you got to be thinking like a 30-year-old. And so that means you got to have some 20-year-olds doing your thinking for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's a problem, because as an owner, all of a sudden you're not a business owner per se, you're an educator. And you're taking these people to school every day because there's no book to read on this.
No,
it's out of date.
It's happening right now.
Right, absolutely. So that's a real problem for a lot of people, is the patience required and the learning curve to teach these young people where you want to go.
Yes.
And they can do a lot with it. But, I don't have any children, and my wife is a school teacher, so she understands teaching.
I'm a school teacher.
I've got the patience of about a 2-year-old, so I struggle with that. But, if you're not willing to commit to educating your young people, you're not going to make this.
So when you look back at this little sport of triathlon that you started doing in the early 80s and see the sport become an Olympic sport in 2000, there's 70.3 races around the world, there's 40-some full Ironmans. Does it just blow you away, just the growth of the sport?
Yeah, but, I was like a small group of people that started going to Kona in the late 80s and all, and we could tell it was a cool thing, but we were young and we just all thought it was cool.
Yes.
But it's certainly got some good leadership going on and some different thinking now. But the biggest thing that's going to happen, I believe,
Yes.
is the Title IX women's triathlon. People don't understand yet where that's going to go. But because college sports, basketball,
Yes.
baseball, football, is so important to these universities, and now with the Title IX ruling, they have to do this. So they're going to have to go out and build that team spirit and do all that so their women's triathlon team can go out and take one for the Giffer, or whatever it is.
Right.
That's going to be a big deal if it's marketed right.
Well, with USAT funding, I think it was a couple $1 million to fund that NCAA program, so that's sort of going down that pathway.
Right. And so that's where a lot of these young shop owners, they're just not aware of these kind of things, and they don't know to go to their local universities. They go, well, I can't go on that campus. It's a huge thing with columns. I go, there's still some people there. You can go to the football field, find the coach, go to the athletic director, but make an impact because that impacts your business.
Love that. John, thanks so much for taking time.
Glad to do it anytime.
All right, John Cobb has been our guest. Hold on, everyone. We will be right back.